Hello everybody, Ben Woodruff here, and today's video I'm really excited to do. This has taken years of work and a lot of money actually to produce this one, and a lot of time and planning. There's a lot to go over, and I know a lot of people only listen to the first few minutes, so let me lay this out. I'm doing several different segments in this video. You can go ahead and look in the link below and forward to the part you want to see. So the first part, I'm going to be teaching what is the difference between cacao and cocoa, and there is a very important big difference. Second of all, I'm going to be going into the ancient use and trade and spiritual significance of cacao, both in Mesoamerica all the way up to the American Southwest. Then I'm going to be visiting with my friend Lucas, who is a master of all things plants, and he runs all the plants and all the herbology, everything to do with plants, at the Living Planet Aquarium. And he's the only person in Utah to have ever propagated a cacao tree. There are some cacao trees growing in Utah indoors, but this is the only one that's ever propagated and fruited. And the way it did it is a very unexpected way. I'm going to interview him directly at the aquarium, and we're going to see firsthand how it happened. Then I am going to make cacao myself, from the actual fruit pods and the fruit all the way down to making making cacao, making the ceremonial drink Ixcacao, and making the pancakes, the chocolate pancakes that were anciently made. It's no better thing to call it. It's like tortilla. So I'm going to show all of this. We're going to check this all out. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. Now, cacao is something that's special to me. I love chocolate. Most people do. Chocolate is absolutely amazing. And, you know, the goddess Ixcacao, this is something I made. This is my rendition, taking a Mesoamerican carving of the goddess Ixcacao, and then kind of making it more in line with southwestern United States tribes aesthetics. But you can see I've got the cacao pods all over, and it's kind of a fun piece. But what are these two things? We use these things loosely. We say chocolate, and people say cocoa, and people, oh, you know, cocoa, you know, cacao, oh, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. They come from the same thing, but they are very, very different. So let's start off with, when you have chocolate, there's nothing better than chocolate, right? A nice chocolate bar or a nice cup of hot chocolate. It's incredible. It's so good. It's so delicious and so unique in its flavor. In addition to its unique flavor, it does have caffeine as well, which is also partially why it gives you a little bit of pickup, and also why it's a little bit addicting. So the chocolate you have, if you have a candy bar, it has cocoa in it. It's got other things too. It usually has milk, it usually has sugar. You know, dark chocolate has less sugar, but that's made from cocoa. What is the difference? Well, so cocoa has everything stripped out of it. So let's talk about first what is cacao then. So cacao comes from the theobromine tree. This is a tropical plant. There is a big dispute on where it was domesticated. Some people think it was in the Mesoamerican area. There's other evidence suggesting that it was domesticated in South America, in the Amazon basin. Wherever it was domesticated, we do know for a fact that there are pods that are smoother, that are the domesticated pods. They don't have this big of divots. They produce more fruit inside. And then the wild form, or the feral form, which has these bigger grooves. The fruit growing off a theobromine tree, it can come in a wide range of colors. And it's a beautiful, beautiful fruit. The pod, when it comes off, well, first of all, the interesting thing, this fruit can only be pollinated by micropollinators, nearly impossibly small pollinators, like midge flies, tiny, tiny, tiny midge flies that like to bite you. So it's kind of crazy that something like this comes about from something that causes pain and infliction on humans, and biting flies. Now, this causes a problem in captivity, because if you don't have little midges pollinating it, normally it cannot be pollinated. I had master plant people address this and try with their huge expertise. When you see the flower is so tiny, and the little black thing sticking out in this tiny minuscule flower, that is where the pollination happens. It's not easy to do, and these two experts were unable to do it. And you're going to see in the interview with Lucas how in captivity this ended up happening. So normally this is a very difficult plant to pollinate. It's a plant that needs it to be a certain level of humidity. It can't handle freezing. And interestingly, again, in tropical South America, tropical Guatemala, you're doing good. But the interesting thing is in Mexico, there's a lot of places that it gets just a little too dry. Anciently, the Maya people would plant and cultivate these in cenotes, which are these sinkholes, and these sinkholes were much more humid and were able to properly grow them. So they understood the nuances of properly growing plants and cultivating them. Now, we know, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead here, but I do want to say, there's an incorrect assumption that this cacao anciently all came up from South America. But it turns out there's a tropical region in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, and this region, both anciently and today, grows cacao. The climate in this little microclimate is perfect for growing it. So the plant is grown, the tree is grown, the fruit is harvested. Then the fruit, you let it sit out, and you wait until you can kind of shake it. And when you can shake it, if you can hear the fruit kicking around inside, you know you're good. Then you cut it open, and the fruit inside, it's very pulpy. It is delicious, and I'll eat some of it later on and share with it, but it's kind of like a cross between kiwi and strawberry. It's delicious. It tastes absolutely nothing like chocolate. So you take the fruit out, then you eat off of it. So you eat the fruit, wash it off, and then you put it in a container to ferment. This is important. It makes the seeds properly germinate, and that gives the flavor. It must ferment. I did 5 days. So it's like 3 to 8 days. 5 days is the average. You let it ferment that long, take it out, wash it off again. Then you let it dry out in the sun or in an oven on a very low temperature. Then you roast it, and then from there, it goes through a press. Now, anciently, you'd use a mano metate, and you'd grind it and press it, and it comes out looking like chocolate. It looks like a bar of chocolate. It's not sweet at all. And this is cacao, not cocoa. Now, from this, you can separate the cacao butter out. Now, cacao butter is white. And there's different ways to do it. Today, in the modern world, they use a press, and they press it and separate it out. Anciently, you would take this cacao that you've just made, and you put it in a pot of boiling water, and you'd boil it until all the water boils down, and you just kind of have the sludgy cacao left, and then the butter rises to the top, and you strain it out through a strainer. And it's wet, it just looks like butter, and then it solidifies into this white stuff that looks just like butter. Modern cocoa does that. They take out the butter, and then they press it through all these hard chemicals like alkali and lye and different things to leach out certain chemicals. I don't know why, but they do this. And so what you're left, you've got like about 10% of what the original cacao was. So cocoa is one part. So if this is cacao, this is cocoa. All of this went into making cacao. This is the cocoa you have left. So modern industry takes that cocoa, mixes it with milk, mixes it with sugar, and makes chocolate. You can leave all that stuff in and mix it with milk and sugar and make the most incredible chocolate you've ever had. I don't know why the industry takes all this stuff out, but really cacao is a superfood in and of itself. It's incredible. It's got many important nutrients and vitamins and minerals and things that are very good, especially if you are living in an environment that is nutrient poor. Eating some cacao beans, eating some cacao is incredible. Now, this was also made into ceremonial items, ceremonial drinks, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But I wanted you to know the main difference. Cacao is not cocoa. Cocoa is made out of cacao. Cacao is the whole thing when it's been rendered and processed, and it's a solid thing. It's got the butter in it. This is cacao. This is cocoa. They're different. So you're not saying it wrong. It's not like, oh, cacao's the native way to say it, the original way, and cocoa's the modern way. No, these are different things. People wrongly use them and interchange them because with the vernacular or the use of the words, people just do that. It's not the same thing at all. So let's jump into this now, and let's go into talking about some of the ancient trade and use and how these things were sacred. So this next section, I'm very excited about. And we're talking about kind of the religious and the spiritual aspects of cacao, as well as the ancient trade and what it meant. So first of all, I'm not going to get too in depth, but we know that cultivation began of cacao, of the theobromine tree, probably about like 5,000 years ago. Long time ago. People were using it, eating it, but probably harvesting it from the wild. And then this eventually evolved into cultivating it and even planting it. But it was used and it was eaten. And we think that the fruit was being eaten, and earliest days, maybe the seeds weren't, and they weren't making it into cacao, they were just eating the fruit. But eventually they learned, hey, if you ferment these seeds, and then if you roast them, if you dry them out, that you can have some incredible things happen. And you can have chocolate, you can have cacao. So I want to start kind of in the middle here. We know from the ancient, now in this channel when I'm teaching, we teach about the southwest United States and northwestern Mexico. But this is going down also into Guatemala and Mesoamerica. We know from the ancient Mayan scripture, the Popol Vuh, of just how sacred cacao is. I have spent years researching this text in every version that I can get and comparing and contrasting. It's not an easy read. You have to read it several times, and you have to get more than one version to kind of contrast with the translations and to really understand it. But basically, it's important to understand that the gods tried to make humans 4 times, and I won't go into the depths, but the 4th time was successful. And the 4th time, part of what was done is that there's 2 very important ingredients. There's other ingredients as well that went into making humanity, but there are 2 very important ingredients. Corn, because corn came about as a result of the whole story of the Popol Vuh, the Mayan scriptures. So corn is here now, so we can use cornmeal to make humans, but also the blood of the gods. All humans have the blood of the gods within them, and the blood of the gods is represented with cacao. And with the now the goddess Ixcacao is kind of a personification of the theobromine tree and of the seed pods and of the seeds that are made into cacao drinks and cacao everything. So that's the representation. So the idea is that all humanity has the blood of the gods within us, and that is what makes us divine. And that is where the whole idea of blood sacrifice came in the New World, was that what can you, a mere mortal, have that's worthy to give back to the gods as an offering? Well, some of their own blood. And originally it was believed that royals and elites had better, more divine blood. And so originally, kind of blood sacrifices and human sacrifices were royals and elites. Later on, when things kind of fell apart, then it kind of went very different. But originally, it was you as a royal. A few times a year on important ceremonies, you would pierce your lip or pierce your foreskin, and you would run a vine that had thorns through there and bleed it into paper, and then that paper was burned, sending it back to the spirit world. The symbol of that was cacao, and the goddess Ixcacao was instrumental in that. I've done a painting that kind of covers this whole thing, where you have the goddess Ixcacao, and if you can see, she's got big seed pods along with her macaw feathers on her headdress, and she's giving her blood, and it's going down into a pot where there's white cornmeal and yellow cornmeal as part of Shmukane, the shaper, making humanity. So the idea of this drink being a divine personification of life and death is very important. This is something that we don't normally think about. We don't normally think about this in terms of life and death. Chocolate is just like, yay, I'm having some chocolate. This is great. But the idea is very deep. We're all going to die. We're alive now. How do you say alive. You say it by death. It's kind of like a piece of paper. The words in a book, those words, those black letters are nothing without the white paper to give the contrast. So that similarly, the contrast of life is death. So how do you say life? By acknowledging death, because we don't just live forever in a normal way. So there is a death coming, and so to live is to acknowledge death, and so to really live life. So the drinking of any of these cacao drinks, whether it's chocolatl or cacao or Ixcacao, which I'll make later on in this video, no matter what, this is a very deep thing. This is embracing the acknowledgement of death and celebrating life, and acknowledge that we have divinity within us. Literally, the belief is that we have divine blood. We all have the blood of the gods flowing through our veins. So we know that this idea permeated throughout the Southwest, but now we got to get into how this all went down. With the trade routes, the really nice thing is that the theobromine leaves a chemical signature, and I won't get into it, but you can use very specific mass spectrometers and tools to measure whether or not theobromine residue is in ceramics and pottery. And you can also find out where it was from based on the mineral makeup. And it turns out we have mapped these vast trade networks. Now, we know in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico was a huge hub, and I covered Chaco Canyon a lot in my videos. Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, we know had vast trades coming up from Mexico and going back down. We know coming up there were copper bells, there were live macaws, there were cacao beans. We know this for a fact. And we sadly know that there was a slave trade going back down, and that was kind of the exchange. But that's around 1000 AD. The interesting thing, Dorothy Washburn, archaeologist, did research, and she found out she was testing at a Utah archaeological site called Alkali Ridge Site 13. And she was testing the Abajo red on orange pottery. And when she tested this here in Utah, 75% of all the pots that she tested had cacao residue. And the fascinating thing about this site was just a small regular pueblo. It wasn't a Chaco outlier, and it was from 750 AD, vastly before the trade networks that Chaco got going on were going on. So that means 750 AD, there was cacao coming up from Mesoamerica, all the way to Utah. That's impressive. That's really quite incredible. So that's new. That's very new information, and hopefully we will be doing more testing on more pottery and find out more as we go on. But the important thing to know is that cacao is making it far. Now, cacao beans are really impressive because they last, especially before you roast them. If you just ferment them, take them out and just have them, the cacao beans are very stable. They will last for years and years and years. These became a currency. And they were a currency we know from the Spanish. They wrote down like, okay, this many cacao beans were worth a turkey. This many cacao beans were worth a slave. This many cacao beans were worth a macaw. This many were worth for a trade of corn or a tomato. One cacao bean was worth a tomato. So they had value. They had monetary value, and they would last and they would keep, and they were really easy for small trade and small exchange. It's just money, and you can grow it, you can harvest it from the wild, so you can go out there and get your own money, kind of like the gold rushes in North America. The other interesting thing about this is, just as with modern paper money, you're going to have counterfeiters. So we had people who would take the pit of the avocado and they would cut it and shape it and carve it into the shape of a cacao bean, and then they would roast it, and they would intermix it with regular cacao beans. And since so much of the cacao was not eaten and was just used in trade, this is pretty cut and dry. It's like, oh sure, I have 10 of these, who knows if they're real or not, it's okay. We also have documented that people made clay cacao beans and would roast them with the rest so that they looked similar. So there were counterfeiters going on. These things were so valuable. Now, there's generally this idea it's mostly untrue that, oh, in these ancient Mesoamerican cultures, the cacao drink was only for the king, and he would drink it from a golden cup, and then the cup was chucked afterwards after one usage. There's not much evidence of that. In truth, we know that both commoners and the wealthy had it, but we do know that it was an elite item. And so definitely the more powerful you were and the more wealthy you are, the more you had access to cacao. But we know that the commoners also had cacao as well. It just not as readily so. But again, the fact that in 750 AD, before the vast trade networks were going from Mesoamerica, 750 AD, Utah, you had cacao beans coming up from at least the Puerto Vallarta region of Mexico and maybe as far south as Brazil. So that is pretty impressive for these to make that kind of a journey. Now, you're going to see in a few minutes, also, I'm going to demonstrate how you make these drinks, but how you take the grounds from the drinks and use it and mix it with cornmeal and make food, kind of make like a tortilla or a pancake out of it. So we're going to see that in a few minutes. But again, the important thing is this was a ritual drink. It was very special. Now we know, very well documented, the Spanish documented that some of these drinks that were made like Ixcacao, that part of the process was pouring. You had these ceremonial mugs and you would pour back and forth and you would get it to froth, and that was part of the ceremony. It was a ritual. It's like, okay, we're pouring. We know that in Mesoamerica, the Maya had many cacao mugs. And the cacao mugs would usually around the top have a saying, they would say, this is a cacao mug and it's owned by so-and-so and they're great, they're wonderful, blah, 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 blah. And this mug was made by so-and-so. And then it would have various images on it. This is usually black and red, black and white, beautiful ceramics. These were specifically cacao mugs. This is ritualistic and ceremonial. We know that in Chaco Canyon, there were cacao mugs that have also been tested for theobromine and have shown that, yes, indeed, cacao-based drinks were made in Chaco Canyon, and a similar thing, very tall, ritual, ceremonial mugs. I suggest that the keyhole mugs, the elite keyhole mugs, which I've done other videos on, that we get out of Mesa Verde. And again, Mesa Verde is a Chacoan outlier. It's basically Chaco Canyon in the suburbs. Mesa Verde, these keyhole mugs that have the T-door aperture cut out of them, these also seem to have theobromine, and not many of them have been tested. I think more should be. But that would also be the indication. So we know that this is part of the thing, is that if you're wealthy, or if you're important, or if you have a lot of clout in society, you have a special ritual mug just for the consumption of cacao-based drinks. And I make these today. I take modern ceramics and try to copy some of these patterns, and I will make these ceremonial drinks for friends and have them over and have a good old time doing so. But it's just important to remember this was very special. This was very deep. And one thing I haven't really touched on yet either, I've talked in other videos about the use of drugs of many kinds, of entheogenic substances, of mind-altering substances from different types of mushrooms and different types of plants. These were rampantly used in the Southwest, Northwest, and in Mesoamerica. They were used both for casual fun as well as deep, important, mind-altering ceremonies and rituals that were very important. The interesting thing about cacao is cacao itself, it will enhance any of those. If you take a mind-altering substance and put it in with the ceremonial drink Ixcacao, then it will enhance what it does. So you could also, if you're normally going to use this much of a substance, instead just use this much, but put it into Ixcacao, and you'll have a mind-altering experience. The interesting thing about the ceremony drinks like Ixcacao, if it's made the right way, and I'll say this later on when I make it and try it, is you can taste chocolate the next day right here in front of your nose and in your fingertips, and if it's really powerful, also in your toes. Tasting in here and in your fingertips. That makes no sense, but if you experience it, you're like, oh yeah, my brain is telling me I'm tasting chocolate in my fingers and in the front of my nose. Very strange, very powerful. So this is not just chocolate. This is This is a powerful chemical substance and very special. So that's kind of the whirlwind version of talking about just kind of the the ceremonial aspect and the ritual aspect. Again, this was a priceless trade item. But now we're going to see something unique. I'm going to interview Lucas, who here in Utah, at the Living Planet Aquarium, he is the only person in Utah to ever propagate and have fruited seed pods come out of their cacao tree in Utah. And he will explain why that is. It's a very strange fluke of things on how it happens. So let's go ahead and see what Lucas has to say.
All right, well, my name is Lucas Proctor. I am the horticulture manager here at Loveland Living Planet Aquarium. And it means I have a really cool job. I get to take care of so many different kinds of plants, including a lot of really fun tropical plants. Here we are in our journey to South America exhibit and habitat, and today I want to talk to you about the cacao tree. Now, cacao is a pretty popular and famous plant and tree. Everybody's tried chocolate. Whether or not you like it, you know what it is, right? But it's been an important plant and crop for hundreds and probably thousands of years. But we don't always think about what it looks like and where it comes from and how hard it is to actually get chocolate. But I've been lucky enough to be able to go through that process right here in Utah. So we've had this cacao tree here since before I was working here. I've been here for 6.5 years. And when I first started working here, we had a couple of different trees. They would flower off and on. We never got any fruit. And so I did some research and I was trying to figure out what actually naturally pollinates cacao. And in the wild, it's these cute little midges, right? Obviously, we don't have any of those in here. So I thought, well, maybe I can hand pollinate it. So I got these teeny little pliers, and my predecessor, who was here before, Nate, he helped me, and we kind of went back and forth with paint brushes and little pliers and seeing if we could catch these teeny tiny flowers just at the right point when the pollen would be usable. No success for years, and we kind of gave up on it. And one day I come to work and I look over at the big tree and there's already fruit on it. Now, cacao is an interesting way where it fruits. It fruits and flowers right up against the trunk. On the stem, it's called cauliflory. If you've ever seen a redbud tree around here, it's very similar. There's flowers just on the stem. A lot of tropical plants, including jackfruit, has very similar fruiting, but picture fruit just right on the stem. So I noticed this pod, and it was kind of unusual because I didn't do anything, and I didn't know if we had anything flying around in here that would have. Turns out we have a cute little pest in here that's an ant that's obsessed with sugar. And because it's so obsessed with sugar, it farms. So it takes other sap-sucking insects like aphids or mealybug or scale, and when they suck the sap out of the leaves, their excrement is basically sugar water. And these ants love that sugar, and that helps fuel their colony. So they will place little baby scale or mealybug or aphids on the ends of leaves and then leave pheromone trails all up and down the stem so they can come back and get that once this insect has grown big enough to produce enough excrement. Turns out they got lured into the cute little flowers on the sides of this cacao tree, which also had a little bit of sugar. And so their trails, as they went up and down this cacao tree, they stopped in and ended up pollinating my tree. So these pests ended up fulfilling this connection in nature that I was missing, and they gave us fruit. And now we've had, I think, 4 separate crops of cacao pods. The most we had, I think, was 12 in 2 separate batches. Now, none of them were massive, but we were able to actually process these cacao beans. We fermented it as you're supposed to, and it changes. I wrapped it in banana leaves. We also have bananas here, so that's convenient. And you let it kind of ferment for close to a week, 5 or 6 days sometimes, and then you roast it. You can either do it out in the sun, and Utah has really hot sun, so that helps, or you put it in the oven at a pretty low temperature for 15, 20 minutes, not very long. And then you get this interesting roasted flavor. And what's fun is because we've grown it here, it tastes different than any other chocolate I've ever had. There's some fruitiness and nuttiness that's Not like any of these other, because I'm a bit of a snob for chocolate. I like a fancy chocolate here and there. I can't always like afford it, right? But I love to taste it. But it's always different depending on what's in the soil and what the tree, assimilates into its nutrient profile. And this Utah-grown cacao is different than any I've ever had. So it's pretty magical that we get to show people here in a high desert, landlocked state in North America the wonders of some South American fruit.
My extreme gratitude and thank you so much to Lucas and Loveland Living Planet Aquarium for that interview. And again, it's amazing to think that he was able to, with all his expertise, he wasn't able to get it to cultivate properly, but then a pest in the environment made that link up, and now he has fruiting cacao. So to our knowledge, this is the only time in Utah where cacao trees have been able to fruit in the state of Utah. They've been grown in other places, but never fruited. So after doing that, Lucas was kind enough. He gave me some leaves, a live leaf, and a dead leaf, and a cacao pod that hadn't quite gone to full fruit, and a couple of flowers. And I was so excited about this. I thought, you know what? Wouldn't it be cool? I've made cacao drinks. I've ordered cacao beans from Bailey's before, but you know what? What would we like to actually do the whole process myself, just like Lucas did? So I got online and I found out you can order cacao pods. It's very expensive, but I ordered 4 of them, and I thought, let's do the whole process. Let's eat the fruit and let's ferment it, let's process it, let's do the whole thing from beginning to end. And so this next section is a clip I filmed earlier, going through what does the fruit actually taste like, what is the whole process. So we're going to watch that, and then after that we're going to go into, from after the fact, making it into cacao.
Okay, everyone. This is an exciting day. We are going to step by step make cacao from the beginning to the end. So I've got, for years now, I have brought in and ordered, from the tropics, cacao beans. Now, cacao beans were processed and made into ceremonial drinks like Ixcacao. They're also granulized and mixed in with cornmeal to make certain ceremonial breads. Today, they're made into chocolate. Now, cacao and cocoa are not the same thing. So we're going to go through the process. We're going to start with this. And what happens is, this is a cacao pod. It's absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, and it smells incredible. Doesn't smell anything like chocolate. I would say it smells a little bit like mango. Now, we got to understand this whole process, and we got to understand first too. I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead, and no, you know what? No, we'll get to the different. We'll tell you the difference between cacao and cocoa later on. We'll get to that later on when we go through this whole process. So again, for years I've been getting cacao beans and making things, but I finally broke down for this video. I'm like, you know what? I want to know the whole process from beginning to end. So we're gonna start with these cacao pods. Now this, it's pretty hard. It's a little squishy, but it's pretty hard. And what we're after is what is inside of here. The fruit, the pulp, and the seeds. The seeds will eventually be turned into these cacao beans that I'm knocking all over the place. Okay. Now, what's interesting about this, these in ancient times were propagated by ancient megafauna. In South America, there were giant ground sloths, there were certain species of elephants, and there was, some of these really big animals would eat these. They also would eat avocados. You think about what's going to eat something this big, whole. Well, it's got to be something with a huge head, huge mouth, and, a giant ground sloth. They'd have no problem chomping down on that. And same thing with avocados. An avocado pit, just the pit alone, is huge. So what are you going to do with that? Well, these ancient Ice Age animals would eat these whole, and then they would poop out the seeds elsewhere. And in that way, cacao trees and also avocado trees were able to propagate. So they were advertising the color. These things turn bright. Same thing, avocados. They're bright green avocado, right? They advertised to these giant megafauna, come eat me. They'd eat them, and they're sweet inside. Now, the fruit, I'm going to try this fruit in just a second. I'm going to tell you what it really tastes like. I have no idea. I know it doesn't taste like chocolate. So I'm going to tell you what it tastes like. But to these ancient animals, an avocado may not taste sweet, but to a herbivore, it absolutely tastes sweet. And then you're not going to chew up that giant avocado pit, so when you poop it out, you plant it. Same thing. There's fruit in here, and there's seeds in here, and the fruit is what they're after. So this is supposed to be hard enough to prevent smaller animals that are not good at propagating from eating it. So the only thing that's going to eat this, and this is pretty hard. I mean, this weighs about as much as it's like 2 or 3 softballs. It's really dense, and the only things that are going to eat these are going to be things that are huge and have tremendous crushing grip. So that being said, we're going to cut this open, and I'm going to save this. So a lot of times these are cut lengthwise. A lot of times for demonstrations they're cut across the middle, and I'm going to do that so that we can look and see what's inside. I've never done this before, so we're going to go ahead and okay, so the thickness, this feels about like carving a pumpkin. That is about the density of the flesh of this cacao pod. And I want to try to get this even because I want to save this pod and dry it out after the fact and use it for ceremonies. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've seen online, I've seen people in the farms just hack these things and just cut them and just... Okay, so we'll go a little deeper. Cut through just a little bit more. But yeah, I would say the consistency of this is very similar to a pumpkin or a winter squash, something like a Hubbard squash, which again, you're not chewing through. And let's think about this. Why ancient pumpkins and Hubbard squash, the winter squashes, were also eaten in North America by megafauna like mastodons and mammoths and giant ground sloths up here. So you have the same thing going on. Okay, it's pretty dense. There we go. Let's take a look at this. Now look at that. That's incredible. Okay, now these, within this, are these. So this is fruit, it's a pulp, and it's not very pulpy, so this probably isn't as ripe as it could be. I'm gonna try this in just a second. It looks like it's a little brown under here. We're gonna try this out. Now, the next step beyond this, so this as it is right now, we could just kind of take sort of the fruit off, or we could try to eat some of it. It's not super firm, it's a bit pulpy. Now, ultimately, we are going to have to ferment this for about 5 days. So I've got a Rubbermaid container over here. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to kind of try eating them, putting them in here, then we're gonna wash them off. So, taking this off, all right. So this, it just kind of feels sort of slimy. You can take a look at that. And what does cacao fruit taste like? There's almost, okay, that almost tastes like a peach. That's a smaller piece. I'm gonna try a bigger one here. And let's see, so as I'm taking this apart, as I'm looking in here, most of this, there's not a lot of flesh to this fruit. And I know the riper this gets, the more pulpy it gets. But I'm just trying to, oh, that's really good. Okay, hold on. Okay, I would say this is like a combination of kiwi and peach. And maybe a tiny bit of mango. It's a really welcoming sweet, but it's a light sweet. It's not a heavy sweet. That's really good. They should... Well, if cacao beans weren't so valuable on their own, that in and of itself, I would love a fruit drink made out of that. Actually, let's try a bigger one here. So again, there's not much on these. There really isn't. If you can see that, there's not much. There's just it's less than 1/4 of an inch around each of these. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, I would say like kiwi and peach. And the lightness of a kiwi, if you've ever had a fresh kiwi, it's got a slight tanginess to it. Picture a really, really ripe kiwi. A really, really ripe kiwi that isn't too citrusy. That's what it's like. It's like a ripe kiwi and a peach. That's incredible. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these out and just taking them a bit at a time. So it looks like there's kind of a stalk to the center that these grow off of. And they're actually very similar in the patterning to corn. It's not at all related to corn. Corn is a grass. But, you know, repeating math patterns are pretty common among plants. So let's see. Okay, so got the rest of that in there. Looks like I'm going to have to scoop it out. So I'm going to try just eating just the stalk. I'm not going to eat it, but... So the stalk, the flesh on the stalk. Okay, oh, that is so good. I gotta say too, I am allergic to most plants and most fruits. I can't have raw mango at all. And most fruits, most raw plants, I cannot have at all. And this, I'm not having any allergic reaction to at all. This is an incredible flavor. It's unique, it's subtle, it's light, it's sweet, but it's light. It's not an overpowering sweet, but it's not a subtle sweet. It's strong enough that it's like, yeah, I want more of this. It feels sugary. So what we're going to do with these is the next step is we're going to take all of these. I'm going to put them in here. I've got 4 pods. I'm going to open up another one of these, and I'm going to get the fermentation process started because I'm going to film another video with some of these other ones. So this process, the next step is we're going to wash them, and we're going to clean them, and then we're going to let them ferment. So I'll take you from there.
You can see the fruit. It's not very thick. Again, it's almost like a residue on the outside, but it's so delicious. This particular pod wasn't very ripe, and I learned afterwards, after the fact, you got to shake the pod, and if you hear it bouncing around inside, you know it's ripe. All the other pods I waited a few more days. So I'm going to take this, after eating them, I wash it off, and then I just put it in a little Tupperware container. Now, it was pretty warm in my house, so you want it room temperature, maybe a little bit above, possibly even outside in the sun. And again, the idea is that you need it to ferment and properly germinate the seeds before you roast them. So we're going to put them in here for 5 days. Every day I open it up, give it a shake, and close it back up to give it some oxygen. After those 5 days, I take it out to dry, and I first kind of dry them out on a towel. Let that towel absorb the water. Now I wash them off first. I wash them before fermenting and I wash them after fermenting. And then you dry them out in the sun, but it was rainy, so I decided to dry them out in the oven. Put them on low for a few hours until they were totally dry. And once they were dry, taking them out, they weren't roasted. They still had the skin on, but they were properly dried. You can set them aside for a few days and get back to the project whenever you want. Now it's time to roast them. So put them in a pan, and you have it on low heat, and you want to keep it moving. I did it for about a half an hour, but I think normally people do a bigger amount of beans, and they roast them for, you know, an hour, hour and a half. But I think I did about a half an hour and got things pretty good. So once I had a good stock of roasted cacao beans, then it was time to start grinding them. We decided to do it the traditional way. So first I started with a modern day Mexican mano metate. These are the ones that are used today down south. And take a few beans out. They're looking good. And they smell incredible. The aroma is intoxicating. So I'm going to grind it on this here. And again, I got this from Mexico. Now, because I'm filming and because I'm on a table, I didn't do very good. And I'll explain that in a second. But I'm also going to use a Native American mano metate from North America in a minute. But first, let's try it out on this Mexican mano metate. Now I'm going to also first peel off the skin. there is a skin on each of these beans, and you do not want that. Now, I'm going to save it in this basket because some of the ritual drinks I make utilize this skin later on. But for making the actual cacao, you want only the cacao beans and not the skin. So peeling each one of these is strangely satisfying, kind of like popping bubble wrap in a way. It's kind of cathartic and enjoyable in its own way. So you peel off the skin and you chuck it, or if you're me, using it for other ceremonial drinks, you save it for later. Now, so I've got a basket of the skin, and again, you can save it or you can chuck it. But we're concentrating here on these beautiful, rich cacao beans. Now, again, if you watch videos online of people doing this properly with these beans, they are going to grind on the grinding stone very fast. I'm not, because I'm filming and I want to make sure I don't knock things off. You can see I keep bumping the table. So, but I'm going to first break them up. When they're broken up, these are what are called cacao nibs. They're just broken pieces of cacao beans. Now notice the action, the motion I'm doing. This should be much faster, but it's okay, I'm doing it slow. But if you do it fast, then it will properly activate and heat things up and get the cacao butter to start to do its thing to the point where it will very soon just look like modern day chocolate. Now, because I'm doing it slower, the hottest part was where the friction was, which was on the grinding bar there. And so you can see it's building up along the bottom of the bar itself. That's what we're making, is that little groove right there. That is all cacao. So we're gonna save it, and I keep grinding off camera, but it's pretty good stuff, and it's not sweet at all. This can be used to make any sort of a drink, or also this is cacao butter. Now, this stage in the process, normally in factories, they do methods to separate the butter out. We're not. We want buttery cacao. And so we'll just seal this back up. And now I'm going to try with the mano metate. This is a North American tribal way of grinding foods. And what I found doing the process both ways, it was easier but messier using the North American mano metate. But I think either way works just fine if you have the muscle memory down. So now that we have made some actual cacao here, now it's time to make the ritual drink Ixcacao, which is different than chocolate. So to make this drink, we're going to cheat. We're going to use a coffee grinder instead of using a mano metate. It works pretty good. And we're just going to put it in. These can be store-bought. And this is what I usually do when I'm making this drink for friends. It's just quicker. So we're going to go ahead and blend it up. And you have to be careful because of the fats in this. This heats up much more than if you were grinding up coffee, and it'll actually start to smoke. So you have to keep shaking it, opening it up, making sure you're okay. Now, for the coffee filter, you got to have one of these. You can't use a paper filter. And there's so much fat in this cacao that a lot of times it will build up. So we're going to go ahead and pour it in, and we're going to go ahead and get it started. But we have to keep checking because a lot of times the fats will block the side of the filter, and you have to kind of stir it around and stir the edges to get it to go through, unlike coffee. Very important to remember, otherwise this is going to spill over and you're going to have a big old mess. So now I'm going to put a little bit of cacao butter in there just to make it even that much more frothy. So we are going to now pour the cacao drink. Now at this point we're basically making chocolate. If we put some sugar in there, but we're going to save these grounds because we're going to make something with them later on. Now at this point you can see from the butter, from the natural cacao butter, from the fats that are in the seed, you can see what it looks like, but we're going to froth it up. This is a traditional Mexican modern day cacao frother, and after the fact you can see it's looking a lot better. It's all whipped up. And then the next ingredients to make chocolate, we're going to take some red peppers and some blue cornmeal. We're going to take a few hearty pinches of blue cornmeal. I think this will be about like 2 spoonfuls worth that I normally put in here. And then, break up pieces of the pepper. It's actually supposed to be hot and sweet. Now, at this point, if you're going to put in any sugar or any honey, this is the point to do that as well. Now, after the fact, we're also going to make a tortilla. So we're going to take those grounds of the cacao from the coffee maker, going to mix it up with some blue cornmeal. If you need to put a few drops of water in there too, you can. Now we're going to put butter and cacao butter on a cast iron pot, and we're going to go ahead and pour that in and start to make what's in essence a cacao tortilla. It's a very hearty and wonderful food source.
Well, what we have now is a delicious mug full of Ixcacao, the ceremonial drink. Again, different than chocolatl. It's different. Not sweet. You can sweeten it. You can add sugar, you can add honey. Traditionally, it wasn't sweet. It's a very powerful drink. And we have a tortilla, basically just like a pancake made out of the grounds from actual cacao beans and blue cornmeal. Now, if you say chocolate, it makes it sound like it's going to be sweet, but this is actually a savory meal. So we're going to go ahead and put on a little bit of salsa here. Give it some spice. And of course, this is Southwest archaeology we're talking about, so we're going to put a little bit of hot sauce on. Now, this could be done with meat. Again, this is a savory meal. This is something that would be considered not a sweet food at all. If you wanted to put something sweet in it, you could. But this is a hearty meal, and it is something that is good, but it's a bit coarse. There's nothing quite like this, because you have the taste of corn, but it's blue corn, and you have the taste of chocolate without it being sweet. And then you have that salsa there. It's perfect. Now, the drink, Ixcacao, the ceremonial drink, Ixcacao. Remember, we have red peppers in it, we have cacao beans ground up, and we have blue cornmeal, but we also put cacao butter in. So remember, according to the Spanish seeing people make this drink, they said that they would pour it back and forth between two mugs. We see the Maya people have ceremonial ritual cacao mugs. We also see in Chaco Canyon these very important ritual cacao mugs. They're very long and tall, and it's very much an elite thing. This is the drink of the gods, and we know in some cultures only the royals could have it, but the drink itself, it's really good. It's really good. It's powerful, and I have to tell you, this drink, if it's made properly, is so powerful. I'm being 100% dead serious. The next day, you will taste chocolate in your fingertips and sometimes in your toes, and usually the tip of your nose. I know that sounds ridiculous because there's no taste sensation, but your brain will tell you that you are tasting chocolate in the tip of your nose, tips of your fingers, and the tips of your toes. 100% dead serious if you make this right. That is one of the big differences between chocolate and cocoa versus cacao. And people make the drink cacao or chocolatl, but Ixcacao is different. It's special, it's powerful, and I love it. So, again, why this is hearty and why this is good is because we've kind of double dipped here. We have made a drink, a ritual drink, a ceremonial hearty drink, but we've also made a food source as well as with the leftovers. And the really good thing about this, especially in ancient times, is that this is a powerful, hearty food. And this is in a time where food sources weren't very rich. If you have cacao in you, not cocoa, cacao, then it really good. Really good to give you strength, to give you energy, to replenish your body, and there's a lot of nutrients in cacao itself. Now, the sad thing is, to make cocoa, baking cocoa, and cocoa to make chocolate, they strip all that out. They put it through a press, they take out all the cacao butter, and they put it through alkali and different acids, and they strip it all out so that it doesn't have that butteriness to it, and they take out most of the good chemicals. So what you're left with is a shell of what cacao originally was. So the actual drink itself, it's so much richer and deeper than chocolate.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. A lot of work and time went into this. I know it was a very long video, but I just haven't seen anywhere online that goes into in-depth on all of these subjects. So I hope you learned a thing or two. If you haven't already, if you could hit subscribe to my channel, I very much appreciate it. Helps me keep this up and running. And always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.